Watch more programs like this on cable and stream with PCN Select. Subscribe at PCNTV.com. This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN.
Welcome to another edition of PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Adrian Garcia, Director of the Fair Housing and Commercial Property Division for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. Today, we're honored to have a guest that understands race relations in terms of its history and effect on modern-day society. He has been a mentor to many, including yours truly. This leader believes that it takes a collaborative, beloved community to overcome the history of discrimination, segregation, and disparity that still permeates today in education, employment, health, finance, law enforcement, and housing. Our guest today is Dion Lassiter. He is a nationally recognized expert in the field of American race relations. He is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. He has worked in international race and peace and poverty-related issues in the U.S., Africa, Canada, Haiti, Israel, Norway, and is called upon frequently by media outlets to provide commentary on race relations and potential solutions. And as the current executive director of the PHRC, he has legislative delegated authority to investigate file discrimination complaints alleging discrimination in employment, housing, commercial property, education, and public accommodations. He has developed and launched the No Hate in Our State Town Hall series to address the surge of incidents of hate in the Commonwealth, and a social justice lecture series to provide an outlet for Pennsylvania communities to discuss imperative issues. Under his appointment, Lassiter has developed programs such as the Global Social Justice Initiative, Black and Jewish Beloved Community Dialogue, and the College Race Dialogue Initiative. Our esteemed executive director is co-founder and current president of the University of Pennsylvania's School of Social Policy and Practice, Black Men at Penn, the first Ivy League Black male group of social workers. Welcome, Executive Director Lassiter, to PHRC Speaks. So nice to have you here again.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am doing well and getting better, as they say. So
great.
Let me first, I want to congratulate you on two accolades, actually. The first one is to congratulate you on receiving the Social Worker of the Year Award from National Association of Social Workers, NPA. And our audience might be curious to know how social work fits into the social justice and civil rights arena. Can you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, thank you. I was humbled and honored when the National Association of Social Workers, PA chapter, chose me for Social Worker of the Year. And as a tribute to everyone who mentored me, everyone who groomed me, and I borrow from the African proverb, I am because we are. I dedicate it to people like you, other members in senior management, our commissioners, and as well as the staff at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. I think just as a science in and of itself, social work emerges from the Judeo-Christian experience, the Good Samaritan, that we are going to make sure that we help the least of these, and not from a deficit model or that we're more superior than anyone. And so I think when you look at how social work is strategically interwoven into the fabric of civil rights and human rights, it's empathy, it's passion, it's compassion, it's being there for individuals to serve as a safety net when they need assistance. It's also recognizing that all of us come to a context fragile. All of us come to a context with a pretext that we all have some form of brokenness. And so how do we mend that brokenness? And social work by design is one of those things. You have a frown on your face, social work can provide a smile. You feel beleaguered, social work can pick you up out of that abyss, hopefully. And then the counseling component. The work that we do at the PHRC, specifically the work that you do with those individuals who've been discriminated because of housing. Can you imagine? They go through forms of stress. They adapt one way or they maladapt another way. And so, social work is that profession that is needed in the space, because those of us who deliver the services, we also sometimes go through, racial trauma. We also go through, pandemic fatigue, virtual fatigue, and sometimes, more often than not, the challenges that the people we serve are faced with, they've hit our families as well. We have family members who have been victims of redlining, family members who have received an appraisal discriminatory outcome. And so social work for me has been that calling and that science that actually brings communities together.
No, that's well said. I also, before I go on, I also want to congratulate you on being recognized as the Power of Diversity Black 100. That happened this week, so I wanted to congratulate you on that while I had you on the air. That resume and that bio gets longer and longer as we sit here.
No, I was going to say, my theory is it's all about servant leadership. So whether you get an award or not is really about a shared leadership philosophy and servant leadership. Very, very humble with all these awards or any that may emerge tomorrow. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are you doing? And what I'm trying to do is just serve humanity. But thank you.
So it's been a year since we had you last here on PHRC Speaks. Give our audience an idea of where we are as an agency with respect to our work in fair housing and housing justice in general.
Yeah, with regards to fair housing, this year compared to last year, we're really ahead of the curve. Last year, we all were thrown into a troublesome, burdensome time because of COVID. You had the whole aspect of the moratorium on evictions. You had a lot of housing discrimination, and you still have a lot of housing discrimination. But this year, under your leadership, you've added an educational outreach coordinator in Brittany. And Brittany and you, as a tandem of just two, have really put us to the forefront of addressing how we can expose individuals, not in an adversarial or combative manner, but how we can expose those who are, one, unaware that they're violating the Fair Housing Act, two, are fully aware that they're violating the Fair Housing Act, and bring it to their attention that they're in violation of the Fair Housing Act, all with the premise of affirmatively furthering fair housing. And so where we're at this year is we still have a HUD federal contract. We're exceeding the numbers in that space. And also for your viewing audience, we have a lot of people in our Pittsburgh regional office, Harrisburg regional office, and Philadelphia regional office who are excited about housing investigations. They're excited about getting housing complaints and investigating them. So there's a lot of synergy. And so last year, there were a lot of folk that, you say, hey, are they on the fringe? But this year, there are folk who are fully in on looking at back to basics, excited about a fair housing conference that's coming up featuring Dr. Andre Perry and a wonderful panel that you put together, and fundamentally looking at housing discrimination, not from a perspective of, well, that can happen to my family, but justice calls us to advocate in that space because people cannot violate the Fair Housing Act.
So I appreciate that very much. I want to ask you a question that wasn't on the program, and it's not going to throw you for a loop or anything, but we've talked in the past about, is it time to look at changing the narrative of how we discuss fair housing? I believe, and this is just my opinion, not the opinion of the Commissioner of the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission or its executive director, just mine, but I believe that it is time to address, housing justice or housing injustice and fair housing in a manner that has people lean in and want to participate and be an ally, versus what we've been doing for the last 54 years, which is be reactive. Somebody gets discriminated against in a housing transaction, then we call the enforcement agency, the PHRC, HUD, what have you, and we go through that. But is it not time to take a look at this proactively and speak to the various audiences in and around housing and begin to tailor the message that has them lean in and become part of the solution, rather than keep approaching it the way we've been approaching it for the last 54 years?
So my response is yes, yes, and yes. And I think that with your vision of getting into those spaces, whether it's with realtors, whether it's with developers, whether it's with those huge entities that are engaged in forms of, gentrification, it's making sure that we do exactly that, that we educate the public through outreach, that people know their rights, that people know that, hey, listen, if someone's violating your housing rights, you have a right to file a complaint with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. And so I think it's a model that some people it's a difficulty for them to embrace the model because it's a paradigm shift, whereas though, no, let's just wait. And I think that when you're talking about looking at justice in the space of housing, juxtaposed against injustice, it's your vision of saying, no, we need to go out, we need to do testing. We need to go out and recognize fundamentally that housing discrimination happens in an urban context, and a suburban context, and a rural context. And so I think that it's being proactive through educational methods, through methodology that is informing where we should go and where we need to be. So yes, yes, and yes.
Thank you. The next question is more just taking a look. I mean, you're about to go into your 4th year, right, here at the commission. And I want to get a sense from you what you're most proud of as it relates to the PHRC, the overall mission of the PHRC, and how you believe it's impacted the people of the Commonwealth.
Wow. I wish we had more time. And actually, May will be the 4th year. Yeah. I wish we could spend an hour together. May will be the 4th year, so I'm going into the 5th year.
Yeah.
When I look back, I'm proud that I was able to turn around a lot of things when I got to the PHRC that had me in a proverbial quicksand. Now, someone may say, well, quicksand can't be proverbial. It was proverbial because even though it was quicksand, I was able to move out of it. Quicksand is supposed to keep you in, but I'm a man of faith, and it's a Sunday and people are looking at me and you on a Sunday. And so I give God all the glory, honor, and the praise that, I had a doable budget. I had people who may have not thought that we were going to be successful. I waited, and there's a part in the scripture that says, be still and know. And then I was blessed with a director of enforcement. I was blessed with a director of fair housing, commercial property, and youth. I was blessed with a director of policy and intergovernmental affairs. I was blessed with a director of communications on the heels of a really superb director of communications who retired, 3 regional directors. And not just I, but we were blessed. And so when I look back, I say, okay, there were some challenges, there were some dark days, but when I look at the full scope of where we've come, we've embarked upon things like our PHRC Speaks, Fair Housing in the 21st Century, a show and concept that I created, but knew that there was a person, and I don't want to sound preachy on a Sunday, but knowing that there was a person that was mightier coming behind me, and that person was you. Diversity Speaks. We've always been about diversity, but Diversity Speaks has us honing in on those individuals that do DEI training from a macro, from a meso, and a micro level. Lunch and Learns. Lunch and Learns that one featured the staff of PHRC, talking about many-fold kind of topical areas, and then we expanded it out to others. Our social justice lecture series, which is ongoing. In the midst of this show, we're adequately and aggressively preparing for Women's History Month. On March 3rd, we will have Juju Chang of ABC Nightline News. Recently, last year, we had John Quiones of ABC Nightline News. What would you do for Hispanic History Month? We had a secretary of OAHR, Secretary Newsom, for Black History Month. We're getting ready to finalize things with Anita Hill. Yes, that Anita Hill. And then under your leadership with your direct report, Brittany, and our director of enforcement, Director Young, and his direct report, Stacy, we've been able to not only improve how we do our work in the space of educational outreach with advisory councils, but we have advisory councils that lay dormant that we breathe social justice air into them. And then those ones that were sitting on the peripheral, they've now come off to the edges to the very middle. We have a lot of stuff going on with our LGBT regulations, guidance, that are moving to regulations, and LGBT mini grants that we're getting ready to launch. So when I look at it, I'm more encouraged by the new staff that we brought in, who we blend them in a very nuanced, strategic way with the existing staff, and we're moving out of the space of saying, well, we've always done it this way. We're looking at lean management, we're looking at emotional intelligence, we're looking at newer ways to address unlawful discrimination. And then for me, it's a calling. It's a calling. It's a calling for me. So every day I show up serving my senior managers, serving the people at Commonwealth, serving the staff, and serving the commissioners. So there's a lot of great things that we've accomplished. But you and I think we're very rare in this sense. And there's a few others. We don't rest on our laurels. So metaphorically speaking, you had a triple-double last year. You may not get a triple-double this year, to use a sports metaphor and analogy. So I'm always critical of myself. I'm always open for critique with forthcoming recommendations, and I'm always seeking excellence. And I want everyone else to recognize that excellence is obtainable. You can be excellent in what we do here at the PHRC.
Well, and one of the things that we always like to talk about is this path to greatness, right? You'll be good at your job, but good is not good enough. You need to always follow that path to greatness. And so we have that mantra where, we're just on this path for greatness, but it's ongoing. It doesn't stop, and there's no real destination. It's an ongoing metamorphosis that we all undergo as we go through this journey. So in the same vein, let's talk about what valuable lessons have you learned in your last, 4 years? And I know you're going into your 5th year.
Yeah, over the past 4 years, I've learned that, though we may be ranked number 8 in the country with regards to hate groups, that we also have a lot of people on every side of the color line and gender line who want to make Pennsylvania better, that we have more allies, we have more social justice accomplices, we have more fundamentally good people. And then I also learned that, don't get seduced by the black-white binary. Don't get seduced by someone being Democrat or Republican. I've learned over the past 4 years that there are a lot of great Republicans in the state assembly, and they might not necessarily agree with the way I, as the executive director, look at white nationalism, white supremacy. But there's some common ground in the fact that we all kind of want Pennsylvania to move forward. We don't want to be a backward state. I also learned that Rome was not built in a day. I go at a fierce pace because I fundamentally understand the fierce urgency of now. But I've learned that it's okay to engage in a form of gradualism, and that there are incremental steps to get to the final destination, to what you so eloquently stated before, which is it's not where we end up at, it's the journey that ultimately gets us there. And then what I've also learned is that there are people who are really dedicated to multiple things. You just have to sit down and find out what those things are. So I may be looking at institutional, systemic, and structural racism. You're looking at housing. Someone else is looking at the benefits of support animals. Someone else is looking at utilizing, the social justice lecture series to grow, that they can increase their knowledge base, their intellectual property, their intellectual curiosity. And then lastly, what I've learned over the past 4 years is that, with all due respect to the members of the state assembly, with all due respect to those who are in charge of the purse strings, we can't do this work funded at the level that we're funded at. We need more funding. We could talk about education and the school funding formula, and we should. We should talk about infrastructure and bridges, and they're antiquated and outdated, and we should. But we're the top civil rights enforcing agency in the Commonwealth with a white nationalist problem. That's not saying all white people, with forms of homophobia, not saying all individuals, with people who want to talk about critical race theory being taught in schools, and it's not. History is being taught in schools. And so we need to be funded in a way where we can address the anti-Semitism, the homophobia, the xenophobia, the systemic and structural racism. And I think that if we're funded adequately, we can help the Commonwealth by coalescing a beloved community between law enforcement and communities of color. Not all police officers are bad. A lot of them put their lives on the line, but we cannot negate the fact that we're not talking about being anti-police. We're talking, when I say we, the beloved community, about being anti-bad police. And so we do have some indifferent and bad police in the Commonwealth. So, when I look at everything over the past 4 years moving forward, in order for PHRC to position itself from a global perspective, when I say global, Pennsylvania is a microcosm of our republic. I'm excited about PHRC getting back out and the doors opening. And I know that, to wear or to not to wear, that is the question. But for us, it's at some point, we're going to open back up our regional offices, and we're going to take complaints. And you and I and our chief counsel and our director of enforcement, director of communications, and our regional directors, we know the power of sitting across the table and taking down a complaint, eye contact to eye contact, heart to heart, spirit to spirit. They're just not a number that have come into PHRC. They're human beings, whether the discrimination was real, perceived, or imagined. I want to be able to look them in the eye, and I want to be able to be there for them. And so I'm excited about, we're coming out. I don't know when we're coming out of this phase that we're in, but there's a lot of teachable moments in the 2 years that we've been in this phase, and I'm ready to come out. I'm ready to, with people's permission, social distance, high five them, and really get PHRC back out in the forefront as the leader we are in the space of ADR, alternative dispute resolution programming.
And I would agree with that. I think you mentioned something that, even though people may not think about it, it is absolutely true. When you mentioned education and housing has a link. When you're living in a place that may be substandard, it affects your child's learning. If it's not heated properly, if you don't have a working stove, if you don't have access to internet, especially in today's day and age where we're in this COVID and we have so many people learning from home, you can see that those communities that were marginalized in the past, COVID just exacerbated that marginalization. And so a lot of that hasn't changed. And so when you start talking about, how we fund our schools, if we look at how we fund our schools, that this investment in those communities, they fall pretty squarely in line with the redlining maps of old. And so this is what I am talking about when we can sit down with people of like minds, and even if they're not of like minds, but be able to talk about how we are affected by this, not how they are affected, which is, I think, where people automatically go to when you start talking about civil rights. What do you believe?
I think everything that you just framed out, you're absolutely right. So as the governor gave his last budget address, and as I spent some time with him, Secretary Newsom, as well as AG Shapiro, I'm very aware that we've had a lot of issues with funding schools, but for PHRC, it's an intersection of everything that you said. We should be having conversations with the Department of State as well as the PHRC so that we can look at housing scarcity, school to prison pipeline, push out rates, dropout rates, all because of housing discrimination. There's also some data that speaks to factors of resiliency. Housing scarcity, discriminated, living in your car, your child still made school every single day in the last quarter, was not truant, and is on the honor roll. And so I think that it's important for us to look at all those things that you stated. I think also one of the things for your viewing audience, we've come a long way. We've come a long way in the housing space under your leadership, which is shared leadership, shared philosophy as well. So for our HUD colleagues that might be looking at us, we want you to know that we really in earnest appreciate the partnership, but we also recognize that we are a mammoth. We are the state agency. We can be bullies in the pulpit with truth, love, and kindness. And from a HUD perspective, there are a lot of individuals out there who are discriminating in the housing space, and PHRC is serving notice that this upcoming year, this is not a platitude, we plan to address it. We plan to address it because there are a lot of people who are violating the Fair Housing Act. You know that more than us. But yes, that intersection of where you live, how schools are funded, crime rates in those particular catchment areas. And that's the beauty of where we're taking housing and where we're taking PHRC. People who are going to have backgrounds in sociology, people who are going to have backgrounds in anthropology, ethnography, racial algorithms, gentrification, redlining. And I'm going to be honest with your viewing audience. This mannerism of my excitement on this show on this particular Sunday is because of Director Garcia. I have to bring my game in the fair housing space. I'm human rights, civil rights. You read my bio. You want me to go and work in some prisons? I've done that. You want me to go work overseas? I've done that. You want me to do some stuff around intimate partner violence? I've done that. You want me to address sexual harassment? I've done that. The housing 4 years ago, Melanie Teller of HUD said, with your gifts and your immense expertise, we need you to start doing more stuff in housing. And I listened in theory, but I was just like, I'm not really into housing like that. Then the second year, she said the same thing. You've come on board at PHRC, and it's like here in Philadelphia, Sister Mary Scalelli, that quote of none of us are home until all of us are home. And so I just want to say, as much as you defer to me, I'm learning to be more engaged in the housing space because of you. On a macro level, there's not a lot of executive directors, presidents, and CEOs who come down and say, hey, listen, I am because we are. And I want to say to you, Director Garcia, I've learned so much from afar and up close with regards to housing because of you and others here at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. So this year, I'm excited about Fair Housing Conference. I'm excited about a lot of things pertaining to housing. I want to read more about it. And, it matters. And I'll simply say it matters because I was going through an appraisal process with my own property. And 1 year to this year, it went up from what it was to where it is now, and it still should have been the same. So I would like to not think that it's because the appraisal person came in my house and saw African art or saw the square footage or the magnitude of the house. But I also understand institutional racism and not calling that person a racist. But when it hit home, I was just like, whoa. And when I got this new appraisal recently from SunWest Mortgage, I was just like, shouldn't it have been that last year? And so I'm blessed that it is what it is now. But I was the victim of that. And so now it's like, that's all the stuff that Adrian Garcia was talking about. That's all the stuff Melanie Teller was talking about. That's all the stuff that the data was talking about. And so I'm on fire to support your vision, the mission of what we're doing in the housing space. And those viewers who are looking at this on this Sunday, get excited about fair housing because we're coming for you from a perspective of getting in your community and educating you on fair housing.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you, by the way. I'm humbled by those words. Time for an aspirational thought. If money was no object and all the planets aligned, what would your complete social justice vision be for the PHRC in the next 1 minute, minute and a half?
And less than that, a civil rights division of 10 with 5 litigators who are lawyers and 5 individuals who are rooted in civil rights and human rights activism to go out in a collective to engage in direct action in the same civil disobedience framework that Martin Luther King did.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, Edie, thank you for taking the time from your very busy schedule to be with us today on PHRC Speaks. It's no wonder, and I'm sure that the audience is gratified to have you here and to speak. So thank you very much.
Always humbled and honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. For more information, or if you believe that you've been a victim of discrimination in a housing transaction, you can visit us online at www.phrc.pa.gov or give us a call at 717-787-9780. We're also pretty easy to find online on Facebook at PA Human Relations. And on Twitter, you can find us at PA_HumRelCom. That's going to do it for this edition of PHRC Speaks. Until next time, take care, be good, and be fair to each other.
This program has been paid for by the sponsor and does not reflect the views of PCN. To get your program on PCN Fusion and for more information, contact info@pcntv.com.